This week on Rockstar Superhero. I first heard Digital Negative in early May of this year. Their music takes me back to a time when synthesizers had that new analog smell and to a world that didn't understand their impact until much later in the 90s. Like its predecessors, Digital Negative is exactly what you'd expect. Angry, throbbing dissonance, lyrics that question everything, and beats for days. Who knew such a synthetic style of music would be so important to so many of us? When Daniel and Richard aren't performing music for us, they're thinking about it. These guys are deeper than you'd expect, and when you hear their story, you'll agree that you probably knew it all along. Don't be intimidated. Just sit down, pull the veil off your eyes and ears, and fall headfirst into the creation from this dynamic duo. This is my oddball chat with the makers of something new, yet inspired by the old. This is Digital Negative on the Rockstar Superhero Podcast.
So I'm going to make a complete fool of myself today.
Please do.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Richard. Let's hold me accountable, man. I'm a lifelong musician and a lifelong music listener, right? I listen to all the styles, and I listen to a lot of techno, a lot of industrial. I mean, all the different genres, so to speak. And yet, I would tell you that it's my techno and industrial house. Anything sort of electronically based is probably the one I know the least about. So I always have to do a lot of research because even though I've played in bands that play your kind of music, I admit I don't have the deep knowledge base. But I fell in love with the material instantly. It hit me right in the gut, and it made me super happy. And I begged Dave to let me have you on the show. So thanks for however you ended up here. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I have deep knowledge of that genre necessarily either. So,
and yet you do it, and you do it well.
Yeah. Well,
I think Daniel's being a little bit modest. I mean, he knows more about the different subgenres and how to put it together and all that than I do. I mean, I just know the majors.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think it's just that with electronic music specifically, for some reason, people are very keen on knowing the full history of everything. And if you just dabble in it, they'll try to gatekeep you out of it, I feel sometimes. But I mean, I guess that's with any genre that there's that type of person.
Well, it's definitely hits on the subgenres, right? So I mean, if this was a metal release, right, people would be talking, is it power metal? Is it grindcore? Is it noisecore? Is it something core? Which is really kind of lame because isn't it just awesome? Can't it just be badass?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead,
Richard.
I understand it just because people are picky. And so am I. I mean, you could look at jazz. If you just say, I like jazz, does that mean you want to listen to all jazz? No, because you might not like Dixieland jazz or whatever.
Right. So I like Stan Getz. I don't like Flim and the BBs, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think it's frustrating from a musician's perspective because you're like, well, I just want to make whatever I want. Why do I have to fit into a box? But from the listener perspective, they want to know, it's like buying a package of something. You want to know what it is before you buy into it.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Well, I mean, it's clear whatever you're doing is right. I mean, it's like it's the perfect recipe of goo and grime and grit and blood. And like I said, I mean, I'll praise you a bit. I never have anybody on the show that I don't like. I get a lot of stuff that comes into the inbox, and I listen to it, and if I dig it, I'm begging. So again, thanks so much. My first question for you is pretty simple. In fact, all my questions are probably fairly simple today. But I've heard COVID was sort of the reason that you two got together. And, COVID over the last year has been the great equalizer, but it's also been a creativity thing, right? It's inspired people to upset the balance of their lives because, if people were watching TV, all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're stuck in the house and we should be watching more TV, but we're not. We're outside playing Frisbee golf or we're, writing new material. So, how did COVID start the wheels turning for you guys?
Well, I mean, so we'd been playing music together leading up to the whole shutdown, but it was in a very different configuration with Richard on drums and me on guitar.
Wow.
And so we'd been doing that for, had we been doing that for like a year or something? It had been a while.
It's been a while, but it's weird to think about that it was that long.
Yeah, I don't know. But so we just kind of been rehearsing and trying to write songs and slowly putting stuff together and trying out other musicians to see if anyone else wanted to join the band. But then all that came to a halt abruptly. And so then at some point it was just, we invited Richard and his girlfriend over just to hang out in the backyard because they're like, well, if you're outside and you're standing far apart, that's the one way you're able to have social interactions. And we did that, and just somewhere in that conversation, and I guess I'd been mulling over this idea leading up to that conversation. Like, I don't think it sprung into my head all at once, but I asked Richard, if I wrote some electronic, some sort of heavy electronic stuff, would you be willing to do vocals for it? Because I've always really liked Richard's vocals. And that's one thing that our band wasn't going to have because, it's hard to play drums and do vocals. Also, Richard had expressed that kind of the point was he wanted to not do the same sort of thing he's always been doing and branch out to something new, right? If I remember. Mm-hmm. But he agreed. He was like, yeah, sure. Send me a thing and I'll see if I like it or not. So then based on that, I wrote one of the tracks as like a test case and sent it to him. Nice. And he liked it. So then I just tried to come up with a full EP's worth of material.
Yeah. Wow. What was that track, Self Crash, by any chance?
No, wait, why don't I remember?
It might have been the first one or the second one.
No, I think it was actually the third one, which I don't remember my own track titles, though.
Well, Strange Loop is my favorite, if there's any. Not that it necessarily means anything to anybody else, but holy crap, that's a great. It's all really, really good. But Strange Loop has a kill switch click thing to it, which you may or may not even know. But Richard, are you familiar with KSK?
No.
Okay.
I've heard of Kill Switch Engage, but not KSK.
Yeah. They've been around. They were around a lot earlier. They're like just post skin, like early Skinny Puppy. Late 80s, old Roland 808s. You know what I mean? You guys got to check it out. When I heard Strange Loop, I was like, holy crap, this is Devin Sebastian. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's not a slight. That's a badass thing. So I love your voice, Richard.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Once in a while you'll hear somebody say, this reminds me of X. And Daniel, have you been surprised yet by one of the comparisons that somebody's made? Like, so I told you about someone compared us to Scorn.
Oh yeah. I'm not very surprised about that. It is always funny. I feel like when I'm writing something, I was inspired by one thing, and then what I write doesn't really end up sounding like the thing I was inspired by. Yeah. And then someone else will be like, oh, it sounds like this, which is something I hadn't even thought of while I was working on it. But yeah, Scorn completely makes sense. And I do like Scorn. So I'm sure I think what happens is I hear something and then some years pass and it kind of sinks down into a lower sort of unconscious part of my brain where that's not what I'm thinking about, but it's still like in there as soil for stuff to grow out of.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the thing, I was actually nervous about interviewing you both today because, again, it's not that I'm not prepared, but I was so worried I was going to offend you with one of my, this is what it sounds like, one of the influences, because for me, my brain automatically goes, like I said, to Kill Switch Click. It goes, a little bit of Chemical Brothers, and then Frontline Assembly.
Uh-huh.
And okay, so I feel okay, like I've at least kind of got the vibe because I did a little reading online and I'm like, man, I don't know those, most of those bands that you referenced. And so again, I apologize, but I love Frontline Assembly, so it just hit me square in the gut. It makes total sense to me.
Yeah, that's kind of the case. The things that I listed in one of the interviews that we gave are very recent bands, and like I said, I don't think what I wrote actually ends up sounding like them at all. It was just that was my jumping off point, I guess. I was like, I heard something that people had done within the past couple of years, and it was just the broader idea of, I feel like a lot of those old industrial bands, just by virtue of what technology they had, they weren't working with the same kind of digital setup that I have.
Right.
And so in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't have those drum machines. I don't have that. Like, I can't do that kind of stuff because I don't have that same technology.
Right.
And so then it was just hearing people using their laptops to do something that's heavy that made me realize that, oh, well, yeah, you can use the same tools that I have to do that sort of thing. I sort of had a mental block against it up until that point.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I would love to ask you, Richard, being a drummer, because I'm a drummer. And I would love to know what inspired you as a young man. What got you into drumming or songwriting? And then maybe what are a few influences as far as your singing style?
I wouldn't say that I'm a drummer in terms of having accomplished anything with it. I haven't recorded. I haven't recorded on drums. I haven't played a show on drums.
Okay.
So this thing that Daniel and I were doing before COVID started is a real learning experience for me. And it's funny, we take over the scheduled practice time I have, where I would just work on rudiments and that sort of thing, and we would have band practice then. And I enjoy just going over the songs and working on things instead of just sitting there by myself, playing 4/4s and 3/2s or whatever.
Right.
But I'm really trying to bring sort of a, speaking of Scorn, the first two Scorn records, Mick Harris on drums, some Ted Parsons and Scorn. Ted Parsons and Godflesh kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's influenced me some. I'm not very good at thrashing on the drums. I haven't worked on it that much, and I kind of realized I'd rather just get in a groove and play something like that,
Yeah. Go ahead.
And then your second part of your question, I guess early on when I first started singing, I would hear things that David Vincent would do early on in Morbid Angel.
Awesome.
Who else would I get influenced by? I guess things like Oscar Garcia and Terrorizer.
Wow. That's deep.
I don't know. It's a good question. Actually, I don't. Usually when I talk about what have I been influenced by, it's the riffs that I write, the guitar playing that I have.
Yeah. Well, based on both of your answers, it seems to me, because Dan, you said it a great way. You said, I have this thing that I'm sort of thinking about, and then I go off and start writing a recording, and then it sort of evolves right into something that you weren't thinking about, or that you sort of like the influences kind of just drift off. But what's interesting about both of your responses, and it's how I feel about music too, which is it's about the feeling, it's about the intangible of the influence of the artist. It's not like you're trying to emulate somebody you heard once. You're taking what they've given you, and you shimmy around and you bit, you know what I mean? And you try to find the little bit and piece that is part of your identity, and then you create around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what will often happen for me is I'll hear something that I find inspiring, but what that means is just I listen to, I mean, maybe I'll listen to an artist's entire, all the albums that they've released, or more frequently, an artist has like a specific window that I particularly like. It's like these 3 albums are the best or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
But then my brain will be like, man, I wish that there was more, like that vibe that was instilled by this particular set of music could be extended. Like it's limited to this little cluster of albums. I wish that there was more of that. And then so I'm like, well, I guess it's my job now to try and make more of that. And so like musically what I create won't necessarily end up sounding like the thing, but it is me trying to build that, like you're saying, the feeling, trying to just create more time that I can spend in that feeling, because I feel like I create music for myself as one, I want something that I can't find in the world, so I have to make it for myself, and then hopefully other people like it also.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect answer, and Richard nodded, so I know he agrees. I'll tell you, I fell in love with it instantly. I mean, there's a violence and a sort of a haunting nature to what you're doing. It's just esoteric enough to attract me, because I'm looking. I think I don't want to, of course, pat myself on the back too much, but I feel like I'm your ideal listener, right? The guy who has a moderately deep, skill set, the knowledge base, is open to new ideas, wants to be challenged a bit musically, loves the idea of rhythmic interpretation, and then likes the feeling, the vibe. Like, I mean, Richard's vocals clearly create, there's like a question mark in the music. I don't know if you vibe it the same way, but I mean, I hear it as this sort of call, and it's waiting for a response from the listener.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would like Richard to talk about his thought process on like choosing, because I noticed he used a different vocal style depending on which song it was, and so obviously I'm curious about that. But I'll just say that I do think that vocals really added a completely new dimension to, like, purely instrumental music.
Yeah,
doesn't have the same kind of I guess it's like a human connection, that if there's an actual human voice in there, the voice will kind of orient all the music around itself. So
right.
It's like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of thing. Like adding vocals on something, if it meshes correctly, really bumps it up to a new level, I think. Yeah.
Well, before you answer that, Richard, I want to ask you this question, and you can answer in tandem, which is, how important are lyrics to you, the content of the lyrics, or is it more about the rhythm of the lyrics?
I guess it depends on the project. With this, we pieced together, it was kind of stream of consciousness, word cloud kind of a process that we used to put the lyrics together.
Yeah.
So it's not like we had an idea in mind and wanted to express it.
Right.
So it's more of, like you were saying, an atmosphere or a feeling, more with the vocals than with each particular song. There was this very vague, I can't remember exactly what Daniel said, but he collected a bunch of thoughts together that I coalesced into the 5 lyrics for the songs. Nice. That were kind of, he had references to computer hardware, things going wrong, the sinister side of digital commerce.
Oh yeah.
Or I should, not even digital commerce, just banking.
Right. All of it.
There's a bunch of stuff like that. And we didn't try to focus on something like this one's more about finance, and this one's more about your hardware getting too much rust on it, it doesn't work anymore, or something like that. It was just all together.
Yeah.
And it was interesting with the songs because I listened to each one, and there was a point in each one where I could go, okay, that I could put a verse right there. You know?
Yeah, and that was interesting because it wasn't necessarily, I didn't really think about where the vocals would go. I wasn't like, this is the verse, like put your vocals here. So it was interesting to see what he picked out.
And it was interesting to arrange it that way too, because there's one song that I think has two verses in it, and the other ones, they're all in just one place, which is I think a little odd too.
Yeah.
Makes it unique, you know? So I just tried to do a mood for each song based on the part that I picked out and I was singing over.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's definitely, I mean, different moods across the EP. You know, I have 5 songs. I'm assuming it's a 5-song EP, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I've been calling it over the last week is music to listen to in the dark. It's very much that. When I was a younger man, I was listening to Jean-Michel Jarre and old Kate Bush, and I would sit in the dark with a glass of wine and listen to music until 4 a.m. and let it take me to a place, right? Well, almost like it was like a second drug, if you will. And I found that when I do this with my kids, and I don't give them wine, but I have them sit at our table, and I have them get out crayons, because my mom did this with me, and I play your music. I've done this already. Play your music, and my kids will draw what they see in their head. And your music is perfect for that. I mean, it's just, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I wanted to share with you because it's really fantastic and moody, and it's all the feels, man.
Yeah. Well, that's very flattering.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Kate Bush, because I've actually been getting into Kate Bush a lot recently. Like, I hadn't really known about her that much in the past, and then a couple of years ago I started delving into her catalog, and it's really great stuff. Certainly flattering to be compared to her.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, if it's worth listening to, it's lovely. I mean, going back to old technology, Kate was using the old synclavier, you know what I mean? And or however it's pronounced, synclavier, however it is. But have you listened to the Dreaming?
Yeah.
That's the album, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I kind of what I said earlier, where there's usually a little cluster of albums. To me, it's the Dreaming and Hounds of Love are the two that, and I really can't choose between them. I love them both. And then on either side of that, what's the Never Forever, I think, is the one right before the Dreaming. And that one's pretty good. And then the Sensual World is like not as good, I think, but it's just like there's that little bell curve of she really peaked with those two, and then the ones around it are also pretty good, but just like it's interesting how that happens.
It's bookended by a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not really interested in.
Right.
You guys are you both from Northern Virginia, or are you transplants? Why are you there? Because usually guys who are like you are creating these pieces of music seem to be dead set right in the middle of a metropolis somewhere, right? Or maybe on a scene. And I don't know what it's like in Northern Virginia these days, but how'd you end up there? Did you grow up there?
You want me to answer first? Well, so no, I moved out here from Arizona, and so for me, this is like the middle of a metropolis compared to I grew up out in the middle of the desert, and so I'm just so excited to be in a place where I can find anyone who has similar interests, because the problem when you have a very low population density is it's percentage-wise, you're not likely to find people who are into the same kind of stuff as you. But I moved out here about, I guess, coming up on 11 years ago. I kind of ended up in Virginia specifically just by accident because I was moving to the DC area.
Gotcha.
And it's hard to find housing in DC that's affordable. So when I first moved out here, I was in Maryland for a bit. And then I did find a house in DC, but it was like an extremely run down, shitty house. And that was the only reason I could afford it. And then I ended up in Virginia just because that's, it's just where you look online for places where you can afford to live and see what best matches your interests, sort of thing.
Yeah. How about you, Richard?
I've been living in Northern Virginia for most of my life.
Gotcha.
I moved to Northern Virginia with the family in time to start elementary school, maybe? Or no.
Okay.
Preschool, maybe it was. I think it was preschool. And Northern Virginia has a few different scenes. I got plugged in to the hardcore and metal scene near the end of high school and went on from there. And Daniel, maybe I could speak for Daniel, say Daniel especially, but we both benefited a little from discovering the weirdo noise scene in DC. It's a small scene because the weirder and alienating it gets, the less people are into it, and you keep seeing the same people at the shows. Everyone's wearing black or gray, you'll just see someone twisted knobs, or somebody's using contact mics or doing something else odd. It's great stuff.
Yeah, and that's the reason that I moved out here was just that I'd been posting music online. There used to be this website called Soundclick. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. So I was on Soundclick like when I was in high school and then through college, and I met a couple people on there, and one of them lived in DC. And so then when I graduated college, I just knew I wanted to move somewhere other than Arizona. And to a more populated area, like I said. And the person that I knew who he lives in Tacoma Park, but that area. And he was like, well, come out here. And so he introduced me to that exact scene that Richard's talking about, which like Sonic Circuits has always been a big hub for that stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of.
Yeah, they do a yearly festival, and then they put on some other shows periodically, but that's the person that I knew introduced me to that stuff. And then from there, that's where I met, just kind of branch out and meet the people who have the same sort of interest in experimental. And in Northern Virginia in particular, it's kind of died down now, but there used to be this one particular house venue that put on a lot of that type of show. And a lot of Virginians specifically who would congregate at that one particular house. So that's when I think of like what the Virginia scene is, that's what I picture.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know a number of bands in Baltimore, for example, and that scene is very particular, right? A lot of genty, progressive metal, and that's just what they do, So it makes a lot of sense to me. I've been wondering when I first heard the EP, the first thing that popped into my head is, oh, this is like soundtrack music. I mean, and I'm not saying it's just, like it's just instrumental or it's just provocative, but it sounds like music that would work in a film. And again, not to, equate it to Chemical Brothers or Dust Brothers or any of the brothers, these bands that have done, cinema work, movies like Fight Club and whatnot. Do you have any influence, or do you have anything like from the cinema space that creates something in you that you say, oh, wow, I visualize this. I bet you I can create a sonic version of what I'm seeing.
There's kind of two things that makes me think of. One is that I was actually, when I was in college, I went there for media arts, which is film and television.
Okay.
And while I was there, someone, I don't know if they were a grad student or they might have been a professor. Someone at the school put out just like a call for asking if there were any students who wanted to do a soundtrack to their film. You know, it was a very small movie production that they were doing as part of the media arts program. And so I did that, and I was a little, looking back on it, I'm not super happy with what I did, but I mean, I guess I was very young, so that's to be expected. But
Yeah.
I did have that one experience with soundtrack work, but I actually found it very difficult. And I've talked to Richard about this too, that I've never been able to make a music video. I, for some reason, can't wrap my head around how to make a good music video. But the other aspect of it is, when I was writing this EP, one of the ideas behind it was it's going to be sample based, and I need to pick samples that all kind of feel that all fit the right mood. And
Right.
in that, the mood that I had in mind was sort of like futuristic and dystopian. And I was like, what sounds would work with that? And I was thinking about, well, movie trailers have a very weird, like there's this own genre of movie trailer. It's not quite music, but it's just like whooshing sounds and like boom kind of sounds.
Yeah. My buddy does that in New York. He creates.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that was one of the I looked up on YouTube just compilations of movie trailer sound effects from various. I don't know. Some of them I think were from actual movies, and I think some were like, like public domain. Anyone can use this for their kind of.
Yeah.
But I was like, I think it would be interesting to utilize that in a more rhythmic, like actually put it into a song that's like a song with beats and vocals and stuff like that.
Right.
And now that I think about it, I think I was partially inspired by, there's an experimental musician, I think based out of Richmond, called Airport. And they had at least one album that was more freeform, not beat based, but it was just kind of like ambient noise. And then someone was doing spoken word on top of it. But if I remember correctly, at least one of their releases, they used what sounded to me like those movie trailer sound effects. And that's one of the things that's good about sampling, is decontextualizing something. And then, like, what if you thought about this in a different way? If you take something that normally has a very specific purpose and then use it for a different purpose. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, Kate Bush was doing that again with in the early '80s, and Depeche Mode did that with motorcycles and vacuum cleaners and all sorts of sort of reimagining of mechanical items sitting around the house. You guys seem to me very complex individuals. What was the thing that drew you together? Because I know you said, you met and I get that, but who reached out to who first? Was it a family connection thing? Was it a friend connection thing? I might have missed that, and I apologize if I did.
That's okay. I might have reached out to Daniel about doing music together first, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah,
and
I think that's right.
Okay. And I met him because the bass player of this band that I'm in, he used to front a doom band, and Daniel played in the doom band.
Oh, wow.
And I had seen them play. I went to the show because of the connection, and that's how I met Daniel.
Okay.
And then and then we saw each other at a show, which would happen often because we would, we had some similar tastes. And one time I just started talking to him about music. Hey, do you want to do something together? It was very natural.
Yeah, we met a long time before we actually started playing music together. And actually, another aspect of that was that I happened to move very close to where Richard lived without realizing that he lived there. But I was just walking down the street near my house after. I don't live there now, but
yeah.
And I just saw.
That's a good story.
Yeah, I was so I was wandering around trying to find a laundromat because I'd looked one up on Google Maps, and it's ridiculous. I don't have a smartphone. That's part of the story.
That's
too.
Cool. That's very smart of you.
But so I was wandering around trying to find a laundromat, and I happened to glance inside was it a Chipotle that I glanced inside a Chipotle, and I was like, what? That's Richard. And so I just went in there. I was like, why are you in this random Chipotle? And so that was, I think that helped facilitate things, because then we both realized, well, if we were in a band together, it would be very easy because we live very close to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And so this is referring to the band where he's on guitar and I'm on drums.
Right. So that's how that started. And then, this is an offshoot of that.
Cool. Now it all ties together in my brain. It works better.
And it makes your line of questioning now makes you wonder, if COVID hadn't happened, had this project ever happened, or if it did, would I be involved in it?
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know.
The beauty is, not that I want COVID to happen and people to die or get sick, but a lot of amazing things have come from it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a negative person, and I don't imagine you guys are either, but it does seem that there's a certain culling, right? This thing that's happening in the world, that these tribes are being created and people are being separated from where they originally were and forced into new camps. It's a very, very strange world we're living in right now. Real easy to write really pissy music about too.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I mean, I have felt pretty drained of energy by this whole thing, but like you say, people find a way still to accomplish things. And I don't know if I would have ever sat down and written these particular songs if I hadn't been kind of forced into this situation.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm always a bit hesitant to ask the next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, which is usually when I hear music like this, there's a lot of darker qualities to it. Anger, bitterness. You're rarely singing this joyful lyrics in something that's, fairly intense or hyper, or like I said before, violent sounding. And yet when I meet folks like you, both of you are very nice. You're kind. There's nothing scary about you. You know what I mean? So it's the image of dark music or industrial music or heavy metal is always, this is a group of pissed off guys. They hate everybody. They're busy worshiping Satan. Whatever the hell the world thinks, because they don't know and they follow stereotypes. But can you give me a snapshot of what formed you? Like, do you mind each of you giving me a 2 minute or 3 minutes, how I grew up, what made me think about all of this stuff in the first place? Because there's always a hiccup in life that sort of forces an artist to step into their truth. And I'm curious how that is for you guys.
Well, my dad would refer to it as escapism. When I was young, I was a Star Trek freak.
Nice.
Actually, I still am, but
yeah, same.
I would. Oh, great. I don't know if we've talked about Star Trek, or maybe we have, and I don't remember.
I think briefly, like I saw that you had a whole DVD set, and I commented on it.
Okay.
Once.
Well, we're going to have to talk about that some more. I'm glad we're doing this interview. So.
Uh-oh.
And I got it. Really
well, Richard, you froze for a second there. Can you
start over?
I would tape all the episodes when they would come on syndication, and I would go and all the rest of it. And I got really into comic books, collected tons of those, subscribed to them and everything.
Nice.
And then I got into music. So that was the latest form of escapism, if we're going to keep with this theory, and when you're younger, unless you stay an audiophile, I think it's when you're younger and you still got things you have to work out of your system, you'll just put on your headphones and lie on your bed or your couch and just listen to music and try to tune everything out. And try to listen to Disintegration by The Cure and all that.
Oh
And
my God! You said the magic words. Yeah.
And then when you're feeling more mad at the world, you'll do the same thing, but listen to Through Silver and Blood by Neurosis instead.
Oh my God.
So you move on to different things, right?
Yeah. Wow. Next thing you're going to tell me you're listening to like Peter Gabriel's first album.
Oh, it's funny because I haven't really gotten dug into the old stuff. I've got so Shaking the Tree.
Oh yeah.
And I can't remember if I've got the DVD of his first concert film or not.
You mean the
one after So,
Oh yeah, the one in Athens. The one that he did in Athens.
Maybe.
Yeah. It has like Lay Your Hands on Me, and Manu Katche's playing drums.
Well, I don't remember, but I think maybe Sledgehammer was the encore or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he's done a few of those. He did this. I went to the theater and saw this great one where he played with an orchestra.
Oh yeah.
The first half was all this evil, weird stuff and then the second half was all the hits.
Yeah. I prefer all the evil, weird stuff personally.
Yeah, sure.
How about you, Daniel?
Well, it's interesting that I'd say that my situation was fairly similar. I mean, obviously we both like Star Trek, but I think that escapism is a huge part of it too, because like I said, I grew up in a very tiny town out in the middle of the desert, and it just didn't seem like there was much to do. And so, I would seek escape through, TV and movies and music. And I mean, as far as how I got into metal specifically, I do think that it is tied to, feelings of anger or at least some kind of dissatisfaction with something. And I think it's sort of a amorphous feeling where you can't necessarily pin down what it is that's upsetting you. But I mean, that's kind of, when we were talking about the lyrics for this album, we're just trying to hit a mood. And when I was kind of brainstorming pairs of words or like small, tiny phrases. And it is just stuff that is anxiety inducing, so like just feelings of, we don't feel like we're, as a species, we're really in control of what's going, like it feels like we're kind of on a runaway train. Technology is helping us, but also driving us in ways that we weren't expecting or predicting. And finance, as I often feel like I don't understand how banks work enough. And if my bank told me tomorrow that they took all my money because of some contract I signed without realizing it, I wouldn't be surprised. It just seems like the system is so complex that as an individual you feel kind of powerless. And I think then that leads to wanting to, I guess, just vaguely lash out, or ideally artistically, rather than, randomly committing acts of actual violence in the world. I think it's a lot better to funnel that into artistic expression or consumption. I mean, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but as a young child, I was just kind of getting music that my parents were listening to and picking out what of that I liked. And Peter Gabriel was one of the artists that I latched onto back then. And then as I grew up, and the internet helped with this too, because like communities like Soundclick gave people like me who had a very restricted social scene more access to a broad variety of points of view. And people on there would be like, oh, well, have you ever heard of this weird thing? And so I branched out a lot. And also I was specifically trying to find, so I got into metal generally, but then I was trying to find metal that I could use that uses a drum machine, because I could never find a drummer where I lived. Right. And so I was like, well, how have other people done this without a drummer? There has to be some way to do it. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it is just sort of like stemming from a feeling of, I guess, anxiety or powerlessness, and then gravitating towards art that resonates with that thing, that feeling inside you. It's like, this means that other people felt a similar way, and we can connect on that level.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm sorry. This is great, because when Daniel was talking about where all these little pieces of lyrics came from, I didn't know that. Oh. he just sent me the Word doc with this long list of short phrases in it, and he goes, "What do you think of this? Can you do something with it?" And he didn't give me any context.
Oh,
so this was all new to me.
Well, I guess we need to get interviewed more often. Apparently, don't talk about things.
This is beneficial to us. This interview.
Rockstar Superhero saving the world.
That's right.
I talked to Megan Target of Vexed the other day. They are on Napalm Records, and so they're a big, grindcore band from the UK. And what I love about her is she, as a human, belies the stereotype of the metal front woman, right? So two things. One, I have a question from her for you, which is fun. And two, do you think that you fit in the stereotype of being a techno industrial, you know what I mean? Do you feel like you guys are the social, what's the opposite of butterfly? The guy that stays in the dark house and stays by himself and just writes angry music. Do you feel like you fit that stereotype? Because I'm talking to two really cool, nice guys who are really open with me, so I don't see it. You know what I mean?
I think I dress pretty normal for a metalhead.
Yeah.
I try to avoid some of the, like I'll wear a collared shirt to a show once in a while just to break things up a little bit.
Right.
Daniel dresses slightly more. He'll wear a weird shirt once in a while that you might see at one of those noise shows.
Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, just as far as the look and the lifestyle, I think that's about it there. We're both suburban these days.
Yeah. That's rad. Yeah. So the question that Megan said, and I love this, so I'm going to read it off my thing here. She says, "Who is not welcome at your show? Who do you not want as a fan?" And I was like, that's rad. What a great question. So again, who is not welcome at your show? Who do you not want as a fan?
Fascists.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's pretty obvious, I would hope. But in this day and age, who knows? But yeah, I guess that's more of a risk for people in the metal and industrial scene than it might be for other genres of music. And experimental noise too. It's always kind of like, I mean, obviously black metal is the big one, where anytime you learn about a new black metal band, you have to be like suspicious and do some research before you get too enthusiastic about it. But industrial and noise too, obviously there are a lot of controversial figures in that scene. And so you do have to be a little suspicious of the fan base in that regard. But yeah.
So
this reminds me of a.
It's hard when there's three people. Go ahead.
Yeah, this reminds me of an editorial at Decibel Magazine, at the Deciblog, where if I remember correctly, they were talking about, well, sure, these people might be someone you don't want to hang around with, and you might completely disagree with their views because they're reprehensible, but this is metal, and it's supposed to be confrontational, and it's supposed to be against type, and it's supposed to be all these things that normal people don't approve of anyway. So so these people aren't approved of either. I guess they were kind of trying to say something like that.
Yeah. My question, Daniel, though, because you just said something a second ago that I'm not tracking on, so I want to know what you mean. You said, I don't know if I can trust like these black metal guys. or I have to do research. And,
Yeah.
and I'm curious what that means. Like, do they mean it, right? Is that what you're getting at? Like, do they mean it, or is there some hidden agenda?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, well, it's a question of how does politics factor into their whole thing? And yeah, are they straight up fascists? Because there is a whole, like Burzum is the big one that everyone knows about. Like, yeah, that guy is not a person that you want to ever meet in real life or support, really. And and I've definitely become more conscious of this over time, because at one point in history it felt so far removed. It's like, oh yeah, well, this guy he's a murderer or whatever, and he has these horrible political views. But yeah, I don't know when are people like that ever going to gain any sort of power? It's not going to happen. It's just a harmless, ridiculous thing that's going. But I think time has shown that it is something we need to take more seriously. And yeah, I certainly don't want my money to go towards people who are going to use that money to have some cause that I disagree with. So that's what I meant is, if you in the black metal scene, there's a lot of like white nationalism going on that I don't want to support, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I have a lot of friends up in Norway, and one of the questions we're always talking about is, what's it like when, like, I have a couple of friends who are Christians in Norway. Well, that has to be really hard, because this is a country, and like you were talking about with Burzum, I think about Varg, and he's out there killing people, or somebody else is burning churches, right? And where is this okay? I mean, I understand you may not be for or against anything in particular, but do you get a leverage your hate against others because they disagree? It's a strange thing to me.
Yeah, and as I was saying, I think that why it's tied to this style of music. Well, and Richard touched on this a little bit too, but obviously there is anger involved in the style of music. But like I said, on an artistic standpoint, it's very vague and not directed at any particular thing. Right. And then people can direct it at. I think the tendency is, I think yes, we all feel anxiety and anger. But then it's a question of, are you going to find a scapegoat to pin that on, or are you going to, accept the amorphous nature of it, instead of being like, I'm going to be angry at this group of people, and that's going to make me feel better because I can just pour all this into my hatred of that. And kind of like with this EP and what I was saying about the lyrics is, I think it's really just about anxiety around the complexity of the society that we've built and feelings of powerlessness. And I think it's a trap to fall into, to think that you can pin it on any group of people and say, if only we could get rid of these people through violence, then we'd suddenly live in a utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no easy fixes.
Yeah.
Right. I think with the black metal thing, and you could apply this to different styles of music. You have to wonder who's actually being true and who's doing it just because they think that they're going to get a few Insta fans that way.
Right.
I mean, if there's a black metal band and they tag themselves NSBM, are they actually that? Or are they just saying that because they'll come up in a search when someone...
What is NSBM? Whoop, Richard's frozen.
And they fascists, National Socialist Black Metal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If I've got the hashtag or and the acronym right,
I think that's correct.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's you make assumptions in different styles of music. When there's a Christian band, are they actually Christian, or are they just saying that because they want to sell records to people that like Christian music?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's that type of thing in all kinds of in all kinds of music, and And there's different types of music where the lyrics will get scrutinized a lot harsher than other kinds. No one's gonna scrutinize Autopsy's lyrics. It's obvious that they're not espousing one word that they've ever written.
Yeah.
In their entire career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And things have to be open to interpretation.
Yeah, that is a kind of, I was trying to get at earlier, is this like your lyrics can be about murdering people, but you still have to, there's a subtext that's either like, there's a political subtext of some kind underlying pretty much everything, really, if you look into it enough. But it's a question of the violence of the lyrics is like surface level, but what are they actually driving at? What's the underlying, like, are they just doing this for shock value?
Right.
Or is this some real sort of call to action and this is what they actually want to happen kind of thing? And yeah, so in that regard, it can be a little bit difficult to tease out. And there are bands like Rammstein or Laibach that get, it's like, well, there's some aspect of satire in what they're doing. And so you have to think carefully about, just because they have some aesthetic elements of where they're referencing fascism or something, if you pay attention to the subtext, it's pretty clear that they're not actually, like Rammstein in particular, they're not endorsing fascism, they're criticizing it,
Right. Yeah, you've got the pussy, I've got the dick. That's pretty obvious.
That's pretty extreme.
It is extreme, but right. I mean, you can't. Come on, you can't listen to that and go, "Wow, that guy must have a boner all the day." I mean, you know what I mean? It's yeah. There's a lot of tongue in the cheek, But Richard, what were you going to say?
The other thing that I've noticed is, and again, this might not be isolated to the underground scene, to metal and hardcore and all that, but scenes are selective about their outrage.
Yeah.
It'll move from one band to another, depending on what's going on. Things will be forgiven because enough time has passed, and people are inconsistent. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm Mr. Consistent. It's just something that goes on. You talk about the stuff that was going on in Norway and other Scandinavian countries with the church burnings and the murder. Well, some of those people that were in that circle are still putting out records, and nobody says. At some point, they said in interviews, "I don't want to talk about this anymore." Right. And the press said, "Okay, sorry."
Right.
And it stopped. It stopped getting brought up. But with other bands, it never got dropped.
Yeah, it's interesting how there isn't as much cancel culture in that scene, right? Anything that's extreme, it's almost like that's them. We'll just leave them alone, turn a blind eye. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Besides, I don't listen to it, whatever the answer is, right? But yet, guys like you, there's a catharsis there. It's required. I mean, I think, when you were talking about what you were talking about in the beginning, you were saying, hey, we're very anti-fascist. Well, we should all be anti-fascist. I get it. Right. A lot of us aren't. But us notwithstanding, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I'm just talking in a circle here, but I think it's great that guys like you exist, because it's a way for people to sort of relieve themselves of the things stuck inside of them, and they get to take your music as a lead.
Well, if I'm taking your point correctly, it's great to think that people are able to get things out by listening to our EP.
Yes,
that's a great compliment to hear.
Yeah,
it means it means something to them.
Yeah. Well, it means something to me anyway.
Great.
You got one really solid fan over here,
That's great. We love that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the new EP before I let you go. Yep. It's also called Digital Negative, correct?
Yes, self-titled.
Okay, and it actually released last week, but you're still obviously selling it online. It's on your Bandcamp page. Where can you tell us a little bit about it, where we can find it, just to make sure we're hitting all the nooks and crannies?
Yeah, so Hostile One Tapes put it out, so you can get it from them. It's limited to 100 copies that are hand numbered on cassette.
That's so rad.
And then they'll have it on their online store. They've got I think it's a Big Cartel. You can get it from their Bandcamp. We just had, as of this discussion, we haven't gotten our copies yet, so we've just got the digital version up on our Bandcamp.
Right. I love that you're doing cassette. I mean, I can't believe it's actually still being done. When I heard this was happening, it blew my mind. You know what I mean? So is this? I mean, enlighten us. Tell us how you or why you thought this is a good idea, right? Because I can imagine for collectors, lovers of music, and now that that vinyl sort of back in vogue, it makes a lot of sense that we would go back to the sort of an analog feel. But is it just that simple?
Well, Hostile One Tapes, they specialize in small runs.
Right.
So tapes make sense when you do something like that. I don't know if you can get away with printing 10,000 tapes of something. I don't, the giant, the last couple of Godflesh records came out on tape, and I don't know how many copies they print.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it can't harder to play a tape than play an LP these days. At the same time, I figure it'd be cool for a physical product, because if you put a download code in it, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and takes up less space than a record, and then you can just get the files and you're good.
Yeah, cassettes have really experienced resurgence recently, and part of it is economic, because it is way cheaper to do a run of cassettes than to do a run of vinyl. And so I think for a lot of underground artists, it's prohibitively expensive to put something out on vinyl, but then cassette, you do get some of that. Well, I mean, there's a nostalgia factor. Obviously, people just like having a physical version of something. I'm partial to CDs still. I still like CDs personally, but those haven't really undergone the same sort of resurgence. And if you want to actually, I don't know what goes into printing or making one of those. The official CDs have like silver backing rather than like a CDR where you just burn it and then it's green and there you can see the part where the music was burned. So like making CDRs is easy enough. I actually don't know what goes into manufacturing the other kind of CD.
I don't know if CDs are ever going to come back. I mean, except you still a lot of CDs in the metal scene.
Yeah,
it's still huge there.
Yeah, but you don't see the underground, like people at small noise shows aren't selling CDs; they're selling cassettes. It's interesting to me. I mean, I always used to just do CDRs of my own stuff, but I would usually just give them away because it's just like me trying to put my music in people's hands. But yeah, I think the cassettes they're cool little objects that it's like, wow, this thing exists in a physical form, and it's and like you can get creative with the packaging and what's printed on the physical cassette and what color cassette you use and stuff like that.
Yeah. I've personally been out of the music recording business since 2002. So for me, this is a mind blower that we're back with cassettes, but it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And I would think that just, like you mentioned, the noise shows, I imagine people are still doing, like mailers, like signing up for mailers, and maybe you can download one of our songs if you sign up on my website. That way you can at least, promote future shows. Is that the kind of stuff people are doing still?
I haven't seen a whole lot of that, of mailers specifically. It's usually, they want merch at their shows, and they have kind of a DIY attitude about it. And so you see people screen printing their own T-shirts and making their own cassettes a lot of the time. And then sometimes you have a cassette label like Hostile One Tapes.
Yeah.
But I think it's just obviously people want to use the internet to get their stuff out there, but then they also want more of the material culture that would go along with a record or, a band. They're physical objects associated with the band.
Right.
Speaking of mailers, I always wanted to do one of those, postcards, and it's got a 7-inch or a 5-inch or whatever.
Oh,
cut into one side.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I remember that back in inside like Cream or Modern Drummer or certain magazines. You'd open it up and in the sort of attached to the gatefold would be like a square 45 of like Yngwie Malmsteen.
Well, that's a flexi. And speaking of Decibel magazines, they still do that.
Really?
I'm talking about the postcard where you can put some postage on it and mail it to somebody.
Have you seen someone do that before?
Yeah, you can still get them.
Oh.
Wow.
There's still some places that will offer that service.
Wow. I've learned so much today.
Yeah, well, so have we.
So what song on the EP? I mean, so Danny, you told me I don't remember the names of my children, basically.
I just looked them up. I looked it up so I can.
Okay. So what song? You got your 5-song EP, but I mean, if you had to say this is a snapshot of who I am right now, like this is my sort of my work right now. What song on the EP would be that one? He's got to listen to it.
Well, I was just looking at the list. I mean, I think either Strange Loop or Self Crash. I mean, that's kind of why we put them first on the EP. It's just good practice to be like, show your best, put your best foot forward. You don't want to bury your best material at the end of the album, really. So that would probably be my answer.
Yeah, and the songs on the other end don't exactly sound like those songs either. It's kind of interesting that there's some there's some range on the EP, and it's not just an industrial record.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I made it clear in the beginning. Self Crash and Strange Loop are the two that I mean, for me, that absolutely hit it out of the park. The others are great too. But the is those two have just a little extra sauce, right? Yeah. Right, like it's been peppered with something secret. And
I think maybe it's a little more. Would you say, Daniel, that they're a little more traditionally aggressive? Because it's got the and all that shit.
Right.
The first two tracks.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean. It's funny because it's one of those intangible things where it's like, obviously, if I had control over it, I would make every song the best song ever,
Yeah.
But it's just the way it plays out is you write a few songs and then, like you said, we agree with you. That's why we put those first. There is just some extra thing to it. If I could reverse engineer what it was, then I would sprinkle whatever that is on every other song. But that's just, in this case, a lot of the direction of each song was dictated by the batch of samples that I was using. And it's just kind of like what my process was. I would go around trying to collect as many samples as I could, again, thinking about like, well, what's sort of a dystopian technology sort of sound? Where can I find that sort of thing? And then I would take that batch of samples and start cutting them up. And it was really, the songwriting was very much guided by whatever batch of samples I was dealing with. And it's like, well, these sound good if I put them together in this way. And so in that regard, it was even more out of my hands because I kind of just had to follow what my materials wanted to do, if that makes sense. It's not the same as if you write a song on guitar. Well, I guess you can kind of think about guitar the same way if you think about the physicality of the guitar and on just a basic level, well, it's easy to play these kinds of chords. Like Roger Waters' songs on guitar are just like 4 chords in slightly different orders because those are like the easiest chords to play. So, or if you want to think about it as like, well, the strings sound cool if I drag a knife across it or something. But so like you can be guided by material, but the way that instruments like a guitar or piano are set up is they're kind of supposed to they're trying to do the opposite, where they're trying to give you as much like top down control in the songwriting. Gotcha. Where you're coming at it from an abstract musical perspective and being like, I'm going to impose these notes on this instrument, and the instrument is just designed to do whatever I want it to do with these notes. Whereas in my case, I didn't come in with like a melody, or though I do think that the riff in Self Crash was just a riff that I had written on my guitar, but the rest of it was, I have these samples, 99% of the ways that I try to combine them sound like nothing, but then 1% of the ways that I try to combine them sounds good. So that's what I'm going to do. But it wasn't me following a master plan so much as trying to do what I could with what I had. If that makes sense.
Yeah, inspiration, happy moments, happy accidents, all of the things, right? Am I correct? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, all of the things.
All of the things.
It's if you think about it like if you think about it like a collage, if say you had an art project to do and someone gave you a box full of random, knickknacks or pictures cut out of magazines, and we're like, here, make a collage out of this. That's what it felt like for me from a musical standpoint. It's like, I have this box full of stuff. I mean, and I could go outside of it if I was like, oh, well, what would be really cool here is if I had I need a crash sound just for an impact at this one moment. I'm going to get a crash sound. But for the most part, I guess it's sort of a self-imposed restriction, because I feel like your creativity can really be, it's like a good exercise to place some restrictions on yourself so that you don't have option paralysis, I guess.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, don't be David Lynch. Don't overthink everything and then take us on a 5-hour tangent. We don't need
or don't be George Lucas doing the prequel, the Star Wars prequels, because it's like, here, have an endless bucket of money and have CGI technology that can do whatever you want, not necessarily well, but it can do whatever you possibly could think of. And so he just has no limitations. He just goes off in this really bizarre tangent that no one cared about. Whereas the first Star Wars movie was done on a very low budget, and they're like desperately trying to solve problems so that they can make a robot that's built out of like scrap metal look good, and that's the movie that everyone remembers. That's the classic. And then the one where he had unlimited resources doesn't have that same magic to it. Yeah. The power of limitations, like you said. Right. Yeah.
Right? Okay, so I'm going to let you go, but before I let you go, I want to say thank you, and I want to ask one last question, which is, what question do you wish I would have asked? Do you have anything that you wish I had wanted to know about that I'm unprepared for?
Boy, I don't know.
That's a good question. I wasn't waiting for something this whole time.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, I feel like a moron today. So, I mean, I'm just like, I'm clawing my way through this.
I thought it went very well.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I can't think of any. Like, I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I thought the questions were good.
Okay, well, thank you. That makes me feel better. I mean, I really do love what you're doing.
I liked this thing where you had another band ask a question.
Yeah.
So this thing where you asked us what question we're waiting for, is that when you would pose to another band?
Yeah.
We better come up with something then.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna email you, but all the audience can't wait to hear this part of the conversation. But yeah.
Okay. How about this question? Why'd you provide lyrics in the sleeve? Don't you think people can understand what you're saying?
Oh my God! So I got to write that down. So what? Say that again.
Why did you? Can you play the tape back after the interview?
Well, I mean, I guess
fine. I see how it is.
I guess the question is either it's not knowing what the next band is going to be, but either do you write out your lyrics so that your audience can read the lyrics or not? And if so, why not?
Nice.
Or why not, And so like in my personal experience, I tend to not write out lyrics because I guess I'm like insecure about the lyrics, and I'd rather just, well, if you can hear it, then that's fine, but I'm not going to make it easy for you to figure out what they are.
Nice.
But I guess we included these lyrics, but that was more of a group effort, so I guess I wasn't so nervous about it. But in my own solo music, I will often try to, anytime that I do vocals, I'll try to obscure my voice as much as possible, and then I won't release the lyrics anywhere, just because I do care more about the sound of the music, and like having a voice there is important, but I don't necessarily want the audience to be picking over every single word and scrutinizing every single word.
Yeah. What does he mean?
Right.
It's definitely a choice in this kind of music or metal and all that. If you decide, no, I'm not putting the lyrics in.
Yeah.
Because there used to be, I'm not sure what's going on the last few records, but it used to be there was only one Ministry record that had lyrics in it, and all the rest of them didn't.
Yeah.
And you just had to go, well, I don't know, I can pick out a word or two here or there, but I've got no idea what's going on here. At least for when they became metal,
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. An interesting choice to make.
Yes. Yeah. So that the question can be, do you include lyrics, and why or why not? That's a question.
Yeah. And then, you got, a Paul McCartney record has all the lyrics in it, or a Sting record, and that's not really necessary.
Because you can actually hear what they're saying.
But they do it anyway, because it's sort of like a standard thing that you throw the lyrics in,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So then it's an exception when you don't.
Yeah. Early grunge, notorious for what the hell are they saying? Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder. It's like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, dude. I think you said concrete, but past that, I don't know shit. And I remember I was in a cover band in '94. Really? Learning that song, and the singer literally, he was like, dude, we listened to the cassette like 900 times trying to figure out what he was saying. And nowadays, of course, you can go online and type even flow lyrics, and there's a beautiful printout because somebody figured it out or got it out there, right? The misheard song lyric isn't very common nowadays.
I really appreciate that you can find lyrics these days, and I totally know what you mean. But before you can do internet searches, that you just had to figure it out. I mean, the other reason that you might not include lyrics is for price reasons. Napalm Death put out this EP. Yeah. They didn't put lyrics in it, and the booklet was really small that way.
Oh,
so
right.
It was cheaper.
Yeah.
So then,
just
years later. Yeah, so years later, I did a search on the lyrics so I could see what they're saying, and I'm like, "Wow, this is great."
It's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was in high school, I put out one CD that was it was like some tiny label in Brazil or something weird. I don't know, but they put out a CD for us, and they were like, "Well, you can have these are the limitations of the packaging." And so then the singer in the band was like, well, we only have this tiny booklet, which was like one thing that opened up. So there's two tiny little squares. And so he wanted to put in the lyrics, but in order to make them all fit, they'd have to be like 2 font. And I was like, a printer isn't even going to print at a high enough resolution. Like, it's just going to be pixels at that point. But so I don't even remember. We might have ended up doing that just because we thought it was funny. I don't remember which way we went on that, but yeah.
Barely knowing you, I imagine it was that. You were just like, probably. Check this out. You're never gonna be able to figure it out, but it's there.
Yeah. You're really making me think about lyric presentation now. Wasn't it Rotten Sound when they did the Murder Works album? The lyric sheet was they would just pick out a phrase or two from each song and put it in, and that's it.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering that right.
Yeah. A couple of bands have done that with handwritten stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like the look of that. Guys, I gotta let you go. I don't
Okay.
want to let you go because you're awesome. I mean, really. I mean, like. So I will just say this: Daniel, Richard, Digital Negative, the band, Digital Negative, the EP. Please go on to Bandcamp, check this out, buy it, go to their shows when they're out there playing. Tell everybody about it, which is probably never. I don't know if you're ever gonna play again.
That's why I'm laughing. We haven't.
But I get behind people like you because it is great stuff. I'm always hesitant to use the words like extraordinary or genius or brilliant because they're so overused. But I have definitely, this has raised my blood sugar. You know, it's really, really intense and powerful, and it's captured me. And a lot of my audience loves stuff like this, so I can't wait to turn them on to it. And I promise we're going to do everything we can to promote your work and to get people to, bite on down on this thing you've created because it's really, really badass. Really
Great.
badass.
Oh, I appreciate that a lot. That's awesome. I had a great time. I'm glad you like the EP so much.
I do. I think it's fantastic is the word I've been using. Fantastic.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear,
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, it's a lot better than meh.